Hello, everybody. This is Jack Burchell. Welcome to the inside of the mobile workshop. I'm working on Photoshop today. I've set up my computer so that I can start coloring an illustration for GearCon. Now, this is a particular video that is for patrons only because I want to talk about some things. Things have changed in my life, and that affects you if you are giving me Patreon donations. You may want to know what your money is going toward and what I'm trying to accomplish with it, and whether you want to continue supporting me given the change in my platform and circumstances. So let's get started. Now, while we talk, I'm going to try and get some coloring done. I'm doing a screen recording right now, and we'll see how well it works. This is an old version of Photoshop on an old computer, and so things are a little hinky sometimes, and it's a little bit frustrating. I don't have a subscription to Photoshop. I don't have any way of getting online at the moment with this computer. So that means that I'm going to have to make do until I can have a permanent spot where I can hook up to a Wi-Fi signal and permanent power and everything else. Right now, just to catch you up, and let's get started with the drawing. Let's get started here. If you're interested in what I'm doing here, this is a steampunk robot I've drawn for GearCon. This is going to be the poster for GearCon 2018. Now, this is late steampunk. It's actually diesel punk. This is World War I era, and what we're seeing here is a World War I era tank. Let me turn off the colors because it's a little bit clearer this way. This is a sort of alternate history, and this is Armistice Day. Everybody on this tank is out. The tank is stopped. They're sitting on the barrel. They're celebrating, pouring champagne over their head. The war is over, and that is because the theme of GearCon 2018 is the Great War. So let's look at the colors real quick. Why on earth do I have such strange colors on here? Well, this is a process that is called flatting in the comic book industry. And what it is I am choosing very basic colors. You'll notice that these aren't anti-aliased. These are very rough, sort of jagged edges, and these are very pure flat colors. And there's a real purpose to that. The whole point of flatting is so that at any point I can take the wand tool and I can select one specific piece of the illustration in order to do a further coloring on. So, you know, I may go in and change the color, hue and saturation of a particular thing that I have selected, and, you know, mess around with it. Now, I am just barely getting started, so this may not be all that entertaining. Flatting is not particularly, let's just say it's not glamorous work. In fact, the flatter or the flattist in comic books is generally separate from the colorist. The colorist who gets their name in the comic book is the one who does all the care and thought into what the color ends up looking like. The flattist is sort of just a grunt. The entire job is just going in here and taking the lasso tool. And again, this is an old version of Photoshop that doesn't work perfectly, so it's not always super reliable. But as the flattist, I'm going to just come in here and sort of circle the various colors or the various parts of the illustration, and I'm just going to do a little bit of basic color on them so that I can later come back and do a more comprehensive color job. Now I'm messing up my keys occasionally here as I'm talking. Not really used to drawing and talking at the same time generally, but I'm going to try it for this video. So as I keep doing this, let me just talk about my circumstance. So if you've been following me on Instagram, you know that I lost the studio. That was the place that I've been in for the last 8 years, that I produced most of the stuff that I've been building. Most of real the real thrust of my work over the last 8 years has been done primarily, well, both because of the studio and to preserve the studio. The studio was a central focus of mine. In fact, in 2014, I lost my apartment because I could no longer afford both the apartment and the studio. It was just too expensive. And so I made the choice at that time to illegally live in my studio because I determined that to be the more important thing to hang on to. After all, my art, my business, everything else that I do is essentially, had been done in the studio. Now, when I got back from Australia, things kind of got a little bit worse. I didn't end up making, I didn't end up making as much as I had hoped in Australia. I really needed to earn enough while I was there doing classes and lectures and whatever in order to be able to make sure that my rent was paid back home. And unfortunately, that didn't happen. Had several different lectures that nobody showed up to. They weren't really well advertised. They were also in a location that wasn't ideal. Unfortunately, I didn't have much control over that. And then my class was also sort of poorly attended, I think, for the same reasons. And consequently, when I got back home to the United States, I was in pretty big trouble already. I had to make up I was already a month behind in rent, just, making landfall. So a couple things sort of were on the horizon, but they weren't enough to pay the rent. And unfortunately, one of those things sort of ended up falling through. And then another thing fell through, and a third thing. And for a little bit there, I was pretty desperate and just trying to make ends meet, trying to find any kind of work that I possibly could. And I even ended up selling the rights off for some old illustrations I had done back in the late 90s and early 2000s, selling the rights to them super duper cheap, something I would never have done if I wasn't in pretty desperate circumstances. Now, I initially started my Patreon in order to change my focus away from the work I had been doing, which was largely advertising, largely stuff for print ads and for, just various sort of silly things, still photography for the most part. And the idea of the Patreon has been really exciting because the thing that I really do best probably is teaching. And I have a lot of different skills that I've built up over the years. And I've always felt like I really wanted to hand those skills off to somebody, to many somebodies. I wanted to pass that on. And so Patreon was a really good way of doing that, particularly in the area of marionettes, because marionettes are they're a rare art form. Some people say it's a dying art form. That's not actually accurate, but it is a art form that is uncommon. And so being able to teach everything I know about marionettes has been very exciting. But the other thing I had hoped the Patreon would do was sort of save the studio. Um, and unfortunately, right as patrons were starting to sign up, things still weren't really going well. I had been working for a couple months on securing a gig doing a film in Israel, and I was very excited about it. It was a very cool project relating to prisons, women in prison, and also some of the ethnic conflict that exists in Israel. And overall, I thought the project was very cool, very sympathetic, and interesting, and I liked the idea of using marionettes in it. And unfortunately, the people who were paying for the project, the financiers, really couldn't see the value of marionettes, and the director was unable to convince them that marionettes would be a good direction. And so the project just kind of it went a different direction. And unfortunately, that was my last chance. I was really, at that point, I was quite deep in debt. I had about a $3,000 rent bill that I had been unable to pay. And, if I didn't get that job, well, then I wasn't going to be able to keep the studio. Well, spoiler alert, that's what happened. I was not able to keep the studio. I ended up moving out over a few days, and I was able to send a few things out to patrons before I left, not to everybody. And if you are one of the people who signed up specifically to get marionette kits, you're the people who have really suffered the most because of this situation. You're the folks who have not received your kits, either your first one or maybe you received the first one and you never received the second. And that's because life fell apart and things were chaos. So I had only one real option left. I put everything I had in storage with the little bit of money that I had, and I took my old yellow bread truck, the P30 step van, Chevy step van, 1985, and I started converting it to live in. Now, here's a picture. This is my first night in the step van. And it was freezing cold. It was, 36 or 35 degrees or something like that, Fahrenheit. Very cold. I was in there with my cat. There's my cat. And I barely, I felt really terrible. It was the low point completely of the last few years. I mean, things had been financially rough for me, just trying to maintain the high cost or the high overhead of the studio, and constantly sort of losing ground and not getting enough work and not being able to dig myself out of debt and everything else. And that night, my first night sleeping in the cold truck on the cold aluminum floor in this, box, was very depressing, very demoralizing. But the next morning, I had still a little bit of money. I thought, I got to build a bed. There's no way around it. So the very first thing is I built myself a real bed, and then I, bought sort of a closet structure, and I started doing a whole bunch of things to improve the space. And I haven't stopped. And now I have this art desk that I can use. I've set up my computer. You can see I've got a few tools and a workbench and everything in the background. Things are looking up, and every day is a bit better. But I'm not there yet. I'm still not able to do real woodworking or carving quite yet. I can sort of approximate it. I'm I'm not quite able to do a lot of what I'm looking to do, and it's it's challenging. The whole the whole project of the truck is slow increments forward because I don't really have enough money to do everything that I need to make it work and for me to actually, you know, both live in it comfortable and work in it comfortably and do YouTube videos and upload things to the internet. There's all these sort of holes the in the sort of system. But every day I plug one or two of those little holes. I make a little addition or a refinement. I'm so excited just to be able to be here. Hey, Sabrina, my cat is causing trouble there in the background. I'm so excited to actually finally be drawing in my own little workstation. I've condensed what used to be an 1,100 square foot studio, a little bit more than that, like 1,140 square feet or something, down to a 98 square foot truck, which is really tiny. I know you metric people are wondering what the heck that is. It's small. You probably have closets the size of this truck. But it's starting to work. And if some of my patrons who have not yet received their puppet kits or parts of puppet kits, installments of puppet kits, if you will be patient with me a little longer, then I'm almost there. I'm almost ready to start sending those out again, building them. I've got to build myself a mold making area so I can do, you know, rotocasting and casting in plastic and things like that. I'm getting close, but not there yet, which means you may have to wait another month, maybe. I also am totally broke still, so I'm going to be picking up little carpentry jobs and other things in order to kind of fill in the gaps. It's been very expensive kind of upgrading the truck. Expensive based on my extremely limited economy right now, in terms of I've had no savings at all, and so I'm sort of like, oh, I'll do $100 job here, and that'll buy me some plywood and gas for the truck, and you know, maybe I'll be able to add a hot plate or something like that. So there's all those sort of little things, but I'm getting closer and closer to being able to be back on track and producing the kind of things that I want. And I think it'll actually be really cool. I will be sort of a traveling artist guy making stuff out of my mobile workstation. And, you know, I'll be doing woodworking, metal machining, drawing, painting, 3D modeling, all kinds of things. Puppet making, of course, mold making, casting plastic, sewing. I've got to get my sewing machine and fabric, you know, sort of figured out in here. But I'm still going to be doing all the things that I used to do in 1,100 square feet, and I'll be doing it in 98 square feet instead. And I think that that'll be interesting. I think that patrons will enjoy that. And I want to say that if anybody feels like they didn't sign up for this and they just wanted their puppet kits and they never got the puppet kits and they want their money back, I will get you your money back. I will figure it out. As money comes in, I will send it back to you, and no hard feelings, believe me. I've been incredibly grateful for the support that people have given me, and I'm really thankful that you took a chance on me. And if you feel like you've kind of walked as far as you want along this path with me, and maybe it feels a little expensive, or maybe it just feels like you're not getting what you signed up for, that's fine. I'll give you your money back. But for those who want to extend me a little bit more patience, I really appreciate that too. Because I'll tell you, The beginning of this month, I got, you know, whatever it is, 137.50 back from Patreon after they take their cut, and I absolutely needed it. It, you know, paid for gas, it paid for some materials, it gave me the ability to finish making my art desk and, you know, set up my lamp and, you know, buy the few little things that I needed in order to make the whole thing happen, including, you know, one of my favorite things is this this arm here on the monitor that allows me to quickly change my computer desk setup to be an art desk. You can see the art desk pops up. Whoops. It's a little bit challenging, but this will extend up to 60 degrees or even a little bit more. So it's been really great. And that's all I wanted to say. I wanted to give everybody an update, tell you what's happening, hopefully maybe assuage a little bit of insecurity about what the future holds, what I'll be doing. Maybe this will get you excited as I am. Weirdly enough, as challenging as my situation is right now, I'm kind of happier than I've been in years. It's a puzzle. It's a challenge. I'm, you know, figuring out all these clever ways of utilizing every little bit of space and, you know, figuring out how to get all my tools in and do all the things that I used to do in much more space. This is fun. I mean, it's hard, but hard is fun. Challenge is fun. So, if you feel like it, keep walking down this path with me. Continue the journey. And I look forward to sharing more videos like this. Hopefully I'll have lots more cool stuff to show you each month. And we'll see how I get this video set up. I'll tell you, I've been going to McDonald's or Fred Meyer or, you know, various grocery stores and using their free Wi-Fi to do a lot of things. So I'm recording this without the benefit of Wi-Fi. I will then edit it, and then I will upload it maybe via free Wi-Fi while sitting in a parking lot like a sketchy dude in a van. All right. Thank you very much. Talk to you later. Bye.